What's up? What's going on? What's good, everybody? The Boxing Source checking in. And this is a follow-up to the podcast that happened on Sunday night, which stemmed from what happened on Saturday as you had Oleksandr Usyk defeat Tyson Fury by unanimous decision, 3 scores of 116 to 112, staying undefeated, unified champion, is still the number one heavyweight out there. And this was one of those career-defining fights for Oleksandr Usyk, as he was able to have 2 victories over Tyson Fury this year, and pretty much is the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. Yeah, I stated it. He is the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. That will be included in my last pound-for-pound rankings for this year. But there is another thing that came up after this fight took place. And this comes from Brother Najee. Some of y'all know about Najee. Has had multiple interviews with multiple fighters, multiple figures within the sport of boxing. But he raised up something on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it this week, next year. I don't know. But one of the things he said was, okay, he gives props to Usyk for getting the win over Tyson Fury and staying undefeated. But there had been a discussion about Oleksandr Usyk and his standing when it comes to heavyweights of all time and being a quote-unquote generational heavyweight. Well, he said that Oleksandr Usyk is not a generational heavyweight. Not like a Muhammad Ali, not like a Jack Dempsey, not like maybe like a Joe Louis, and not like a Lennox Lewis. And that kind of got me pretty bothered a little bit, because for me, that's kind of like discrediting what Usyk has done while he has been in the heavyweight division. Now, has Usyk been a career heavyweight? No. But there have been other fighters that are considered maybe generational heavyweights that didn't start their career in the heavyweight division. One of the fighters that I would consider as a generational heavyweight is Evander Holyfield. And we know that Evander Holyfield had great fights, not only in the heavyweight division, but also in the cruiserweight division. So he came up from cruiserweight and went up to heavyweight and was able to have great wins at heavyweight. He came up, he was able to defeat Buster Douglas, who, knocked out Mike Tyson. He was able to defeat George Foreman. Whew, that was a great fight right there. That was a great fight. He had a loss to Michael Moore at one point, was able to avenge that. And he had the trilogy against Riddick Big Daddy Bo. And he had 2 fights with Lennox Lewis, who I mentioned there. The first fight was a draw. The second fight was a win for Lennox Lewis. But he was able to win multiple world championships in the heavyweight division while coming up from cruiserweight. Now, you have Oleksandr Usyk, who was an undisputed champion cruiserweight, undisputed champion at heavyweight. And at heavyweight, he was able to defeat 2 of the top 3 fighters in the heavyweight division of this particular era twice, in Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. Now, how does that not get you in consideration to being a generational heavyweight? Now, there was one fighter that was mentioned there by Najee that I don't rate highly there in the heavyweight division, and that's Lennox Lewis. Yes, Lennox Lewis. A number of people would put Lennox Lewis within their top 5 in the heavyweight all-time rankings. Me, I'm not all too sure about that. Kind of discussed this multiple times over. Lennox Lewis in his overall resume does not really, stack up to a number of the heavyweights that are out there. Does he have wins over Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield? Yes. But when did those fights take place? Well, after both Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson had their 2 fights, right? It wasn't, during the mid or the late 90s, early 90s, from the early 90s to the late 90s, when you had the Evander Holyfields, when you had the Mike Tysons, when you had the Riddick Bows, when you had the Buster Douglases, when you had, the Tommy Morrisons, when you had the George Foremans, when you had the Michael Moores, all of those guys, a lot of those guys that I mentioned, Lennox Lewis did not fight during that particular era. Now, a number of folks will talk about, oh, well, Lennox Lewis tried to fight Riddick Bowe, but Riddick Bowe declined. No. A simple Google search or a little bit of research would tell you that there were two different occasions when that fight would have taken place. One, when they both agreed to terms for a fight. All they had to do was win one fight ahead of time before that fight would take place. Well, apparently, Lennox Lewis had his fight against Oliver McCall, and we all know what happened there. So there's that. And then afterwards, they had another agreement to have a fight, and it didn't necessarily materialize. So all of that ducking talk that people are still trying to bring up, no, that's absolutely false. So with that being said, Lennox Lewis, in his overall resume, some people may have to take another look at that resume. Because for me, I think his best win may have been against who, like Ray Mercer or something like that, during that particular time period. But his fights against Evander Holyfield and his fight against Mike Tyson were taking place well after both of those fighters were, in their respective primes. Now, in comparison, Oleksandr Usyk, he has his fights against Chaz Witherspoon, his fights against Derek Chisora, had his two fights against Anthony Joshua, got those wins against Anthony Joshua, two fights against Tyson Fury, has those two wins against Tyson Fury, has a win over Daniel Dubois, stoppage win over Daniel Dubois. Yes, that was controversial, but it still is a win over Daniel Dubois. And now Daniel Dubois is listed as probably now the number 2 fighter in the heavyweight division. So when you have Oleksandr Usyk that has wins over Daniel Dubois, 2 wins over Tyson Fury, 2 wins over Anthony Joshua, that should have him as a generational heavyweight. If he ended his career right now, you could consider that run at heavyweight one of the best runs in modern history, or at least within the past 25 years. At the very least, where we at? We're just about to go into 2025. So you could say that his run is probably the best run at heavyweight in the past 25 years. Now, if you kind of consider what was going on in the 90s and the 80s and stuff like that, hey, you could do that. You could pretty much have him on there. But to not say that he is a generational heavyweight, you gotta put him in the list. Now, if you disagree with that, or if you agree with that, you could comment on this particular video. But also, to support the Boxing Source, you can hit the like button. You can hit the subscribe button. That would be very appreciated here at the Boxing Source. But I feel like this is a pretty interesting topic to discuss here for the week in reference to Oleksandr Usyk getting his second win over Tyson Fury and staying undefeated and being a unified champion, but being the top heavyweight, regardless of what Daniel Dubois has, with the IBF belt. But we all know it's Oleksandr Usyk, number 1 in the heavyweight division. And like I said, Oleksandr Usyk, number 1 Boxing Source, top 10 pound for pound. So with that being said, that's it. I'm out. Peace.